ॐ विश्वन्दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यैः सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे। नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ I welcome you all to the 19th class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. We have been looking into the question of how an adhikari becomes an adhikari. We said that an adhikari has to meet three criteria. One is that the adhikari must be a mumukshuhu, a seeker of moksha. Second, the adhikari must be a jigyasuhu, someone who sees the indispensable connection between the study of Vedanta and the prayojanam, which is the purnatvam. And the third is that this adhikari must have a certain preparedness of mind. So in order to answer the question of how an adhikari becomes an adhikari, we have been trying to answer these three questions of how an adhikari becomes a mumukshuhu, how does the adhikari become a jigyasuhu, and how does the adhikari gain this preparedness of mind. We have largely answered the first two questions. How does the adhikari become a mumukshuhu? By discovering the problem of samsara. And the discovery of the problem of samsara is the discovery that the struggle to try to gain purnatvam through the first three purusharthas is never ending. And this person who is a karma yogi comes to know that any accomplishments in the field of the first three purusharthas are mixed with three doshas: dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam, and bandhakatvam. They are mixed with sorrow, they leave me incomplete, unfulfilled, and they make me dependent on things of the world that are inherently unpredictable, unsustainable, and uncontrollable. So when one comes to this point, then we say this person has matured. And this mature person then begins to question that I have been trying so hard. Is there any other way in which I can gain this purnatvam? When one comes to this point, the Veda Purva tells him that I have given you whatever I can. I have given you arthaha, kamaha, and dharmaha. But what you are seeking for you now have to approach Vedanta. So in this manner, one becomes a seeker of moksha. Then the next question, how does one become a jignasu then? Because we said that a mumukshu who hasn't become a jignasu can become a spiritual samsari. He can try to seek this purnatvam through various other means other than knowledge. So how does one become clear that the means is not through knowledge? So here the help of Vedanta is required. And when this person comes to Vedanta, Vedanta tells him that your situation is very similar to the 10th man. The 10th man was seeking the 10th man because he was ignorant of his own status of being the 10th man. So similarly, your nature is Purnatvam. You are ignorant of your own Purnaha nature. And therefore you are going about seeking this Purnatvam. And Vedanta talks about this I am. The Samanya Jnanam is there, but the Vishesha Jnanam is not there. Therefore, one invariably makes a mistake of who this I am is. This I am is essentially Purnaha in the vision of Vedanta. But this person who doesn't know that, he invariably makes a mistake and starts to superimpose the limitations of the body and the mind upon this I am and starts to say, I am Apurnaha. And once one becomes apurnaha in one's own vision, then the struggle of samsara starts. One tries to seek this purnatvam through arthaha, kamaha, and dharma. Now, when one sees this entire process, then it becomes very clear that the root cause of my problems is this self-ignorance. And at that point, one says that in order to gain Purnatvam, I have to somehow remove this self-ignorance, and that can be done only through self-knowledge. Therefore, one becomes a seeker of knowledge. But even after one comes to this point, there are several questions unanswered about how does one go about seeking this knowledge, from where, what is knowledge, etc. So that is why we embarked into an inquiry on the pramanas. And as I have pointed out multiple times, this is a very foundational study. Because without this, the rest of Vedanta and the rest of the pursuit cannot make sense, and there'll be a lot of confusion. So we discussed the topic of pramanas. We said Vedanta identifies 6 pramanas. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Arthapattihi, Anupalabdhihi, Upamana, and Shabdaha. 6 pramanas. Now, these pramanas are the means to give rise to knowledge. So we examined the question of which of these pramanas are applicable to Atma Jnanam, to self-knowledge. And we dismissed Pratyaksha, because that is through operating my sense organs, whatever knowledge I get in the field of Shabdaha, Sparshaha, Rupaha, Rasaha, and Gandhaha. Now, it is in the field of objects that have these attributes. But what I want is the knowledge of the subject. The subject is never an object. And moreover, the subject, as we said, is attributeless, because all attributes belong to objects. And therefore, Pratyaksha is ruled out. Now, when Pratyaksha is ruled out, then a lot of the other pramanas collapse. It is like, when the main batsman in a cricket team, if he gets out and the whole team relies on it, then there is a collapse of the rest of the team. So it's something like this, that other pramanas depend on Pratyaksha. Anumana, Arthapatihi, Upamana are dependent on Pratyaksha. So for some first factors, 2 factors to be available via Pratyaksha, etc. And Pratyaksha is not applicable, so these other pramanas are not applicable. So what we are left with is Anupalabdhihi and Shabdaha. But Anupalabdhihi is meant for gaining knowledge of non-existent things. But I am very much there. I am existent. So even Anupalabdhihi is not applicable. Then we are just left with Shabda. And we said Laukika Shabdas, which are authored by humans, they are just carriers of knowledge from these other 5 pramanas. So Laukika Shabdas and these other 5 Pramanas are called Laukika Pramanas. So since they are carriers of knowledge gained through the other 5 Pramanas, and the other 5 Pramanas are incapable of revealing the Atma, who this I is, even Laukika Pramanas are ruled out. So then what are we left with? We said we have to come to the Vaidika Shabdas. How are the Vaidika Shabdas different from the Laukika Shabdas? We said, as opposed to Laukika Shabdas that are carriers of knowledge gained through Laukika Pramanas, the Vaidika Shabdas are themselves the revealers of knowledge that cannot be gained through any other Pramana. So this is a very crucial difference. Just one moment, I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'll just close the door and come. So these Vedika Shabdas are very different. Then we talked about the question of authorship. So who is the author of these Vedika Shabdas? And we said that the tradition presents the Vedika Shabdas as being apaurushaya, not associated with the authorship of any human. And it is natural why the tradition takes this position, because the knowledge that is gained through Vedika Shabdas cannot be gained through Laukika Pramanas. And if it was authored by a human being, it could only contain knowledge that is gained through Laukika Pramanas. So the Vedas are presented as being apaurushaya. And how did we discover them? He said they were revealed to the rishis because of their intense tapas, because they had a very sukshma buddhi, a very fine instrument that can discover the Vedic sounds that are already there in the creation. So then we said that the reason the Vedas are presented as being apaurushaya is also that they are free of the defects of human authorship, because humans can only present what has been gained through Laukika Pramanas. So whatever is authored by humans is limited to limited by Laukika Pramanas, and secondly, they are also not tainted by any trace of human ignorance. Then what is the subject matter? What does this Veda as a Pramana reveal? That Dharma Brahma Pratipadakatvam Apaurusheyam Pramana Vakyam Veda. So it talks about two things, Dharma and Brahman. The Veda Purva talks about Dharma, and the Vedanta reveals Brahman. Then we looked at the Veda Purva in the last class, and we recapped what Dharma is. We talked about the 3 meanings of Dharma: Chodana, Lakshana, Artha, Dharma. Dharma is that which is revealed by the Veda Purva in the form of do's and don'ts, Vidhi and Nishedha. And what do these talk about? They talk about duties, values, and attitudes. Then we talked about Dharma referring to this order and well-being at the level of the individual, family, society, and environment. And then we talked about dharma, meaning papam and punyam. We come to know about this only through the Veda. And we talked about the Veda being a pramana only in the case when one of the means or the end are unknown. When both the means and the end are known, like we said, we took the example of eating food. I know I have to eat food. Food is the means to satiate my hunger. I know this through Laukika Pramanas. So the Veda doesn't have to reveal this to me. So the Veda becomes a Pramana only when one of the means or the end is unknown. And then what do the sentences of these Veda reveal? What do the Vidhi and Nishedha reveal? We talked about it revealing karma. How many types of karma? We talked about nitya karma, obligatory duties, naimittika karma, karmas that are to be performed on special occasions when some special conditions are met. Kamya karmas, when somebody has a certain desire, then in order to fulfill that desire, one can perform a certain kamya karma like the putra kameshti yaga or Jyotishtoma, the Jyotishtoma Yaga to go to Swargaloka, etc. And then we talked about Nishiddha karmas, karmas that are prohibited by the Veda, and Prayaschitta karmas, karmas that are to be done if there is a transgression of Dharma. Then we talked about the Vedas discussing these 7 upper lokas and the 7 lower lokas, etc., and the travel of this jiva after death to the higher lokas or lower lokas or reborn in the same loka. Then we were towards the end of the last class, we were discussing whether there's a conflict with science. Whether whatever Veda is talking about, is there any conflict with science? And what we said is that science is purely based on pratyaksha and anumana. So the subject matter of the Veda is not in the sphere of science at all. If you take this Sukshma Sharira, for example, that travels after death, then science with all its scopes can never detect the presence of this Sukshma Sharira because it is beyond the range of Pratyaksha and Anumana, etc. So we say that those who say they have there is no rebirth, they also don't have any proof. Those who say there is rebirth, they cannot provide proof in the realm of Pratyaksha and Anumana. But those who say there is no rebirth, even they don't have any proof for what they say. It is just a belief. They are welcome to hold that belief, but what they should understand is that all proving is really possible only in the field of Pratyaksha and Anumana, etc. Somebody has to prove or demonstrate. That means the subject matter should be available to Pratyaksha Anumana. But this subject matter is not available to these pramanas. That is why pratyakshena anumityava yastu payona buddhyate enam vidanti vedena tasmat vedasya vedata. So we then got into the question that some people who have Shraddha in the Veda, for example, they go over and beyond and they say Vedas are very scientific. And others who don't have Shraddha in the Veda, they want to put the Veda down. So they say the Vedas are unscientific. We said that both of these statements, the person who is uttering such statements, they don't really understand what they're talking about. Because that is like saying that the sounds that I hear, that my ear reveals, they are colorful or they are not colorful. It makes no sense to talk about sound in relation to color, because they are revealed by entirely different pramanas that have entirely different fields of operation. It is just a random judgment that is being passed without any basis. And so one who says Vedanta is scientific, or Veda is scientific, or Veda is not scientific, it is like saying that this Anjana that one applies to the eyes, it is white like turmeric. That sentence reveals the ignorance of Anjana, but also reveals the ignorance of white, the color white, and turmeric. So similarly, if somebody says the Vedas are scientific or the Vedas are not scientific, it not just reveals an ignorance of the Veda, but it reveals an ignorance of science also. A scientist who truly understands science, right, would not generally venture into these areas and make judgments of this sort. So this is what we were discussing. So towards the end of the last class, one can reasonably perhaps say that the Vedas are parascientific, meaning that the subject matter of Veda is beyond science, but at the same time, it is not unscientific, not illogical, not unreasonable. It is beyond logic and reason and science. But at the same time, it is not illogical, not unreasonable, not unscientific. So probably if you have to use a term, the closest term might be parascientific. So we discussed the Shabda Pramana or the Veda Purva. So now we come to the Vedanta. So what does this word Vedanta mean? So it's a compound word, a samasaha. That's what it's called in Sanskritam, samasaha. A compound word which comprises of two words, Veda and Anta. So how are these two words related? There are a few explanations that are given by the tradition. The first one is Vedasya Antaha or Vedanam Antaha, meaning that at the end of the Vedas. So located at the end of the Vedas, physically at the end of the Vedas. And that is why it is called Vedanta. The other meaning is Antima Nirnayaha or Antima Nishchayaha, meaning the final conclusion of the Vedas. The end here means conclusion, Anta means conclusion. So the final conclusion of the Vedas. And a third shade of meaning is also possible, Vedasya Shikharaha or Vedanam Shikharaha, meaning the summit of the Vedas, the limit of the Vedas. So the highest teaching that is present in the Vedas, the most sublime thought, the most sublime revelation in the Veda, that is the Vedanta. So as we said, this Vedanta presents itself as a Shabda Pramanam for Brahman. For Brahman. The Brahman is the absolute reality. What is absolutely real here? The Vedanta reveals that. As we saw, Dharma, Brahma, Pratipadakam, Apaurusheyam, Pramana Vakyam, Vedaha. Veda reveals Dharma and Brahman. But if you were to split out the Vedanta part, you could say Brahma Pratipadakam Apaurusheyam Pramana Vakyam Vedanta. Brahma Pratipadakam. It doesn't now you have come out of the revelation of Dharma. That is the job of the Veda Purva. This is purely, the job of Vedanta is purely to reveal Brahman. So there is a very seminal text in Vedanta called Vedanta Saraha, written by one Sadananda Yogindra. So as you know that we are not following any particular text during the course of these classes, but once in a while we take extracts from different texts and we talk about them because it is relevant to the context. And it also keeps us somewhat grounded in the various texts, whatever we are talking about. So I had sent these snippets that we will talk about as a PDF in the WhatsApp group. So if you can open it, you can follow along with what we will discuss. So the first statement there is from Vedanta Sara that defines what Vedanta is. So it says Vedanto Nama Upanishad Pramanam Tad Upakarini Shariraka Sutradini Cha. Vedanto Nama Upanishad Pramanam Tad Upakarini Shariraka Sutradini Cha. This is the definition of Vedanta. So let us look at the first part. Vedanto Nama Upanishad Pramanam. The word Pramana has come here also. The very definition of what Vedanta is. So Vedanta Sara says Vedanta means the Upanishad. The Upanishads, which are a pramana. A pramana for Brahman, what Atma is, what Brahman is. He doesn't talk about it there. The text talks about that later. At this point, he says it is a pramana. Upanishad pramana. In fact, the word Upanishad itself has an interesting meaning, which we will take up later. At this point, we will just say the Vedanta is the revelation that is contained, that is the revelation that is contained within the Upanishad, or Vedanta is actually the revealers of Brahma. The revealers of Brahma, that are the Upanishad. The Upanishad is the revealer. So, Vedanto Nama Upanishad Pramanam Tadupakarini Shariraka Sutradini Cha. Tadupakarini, and whatever else that is helpful in unfolding, in helping this revelation of the Upanishads. Whatever is helpful, like the Shariraka Sutras, the Brahma Sutras, etc. So the Brahma Sutras are helpful in understanding what the Upanishad is revealing. So that is also called Vedanta. So as we say, if we have to know something related to the subject matter of a pramana, for example, colors, then I have to use my eyes. So if I have to know Brahman, then I have to employ Vedanta. I have to come to Vedanta, because Vedanta is the pramana. The Upanishads are the source texts. They are the primary source texts of Vedanta. So let us look at the second statement that I had forwarded in that PDF. And this is an extract from Adi Shankaracharya's Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, where Adi Shankaracharya makes a very significant statement. So I read that first. Rupadya bhavadhi nayamartha pratyakshasya gocharaha lingadya bhavacha nanumanadi agama matra samadhigamya eva tvayam artha dharmavat. Rupadya bhavadhi nayam artha pratyakshasya gocharaha. So we split it as Rupadi Abhavad Hi Nayam Arthaha Na Ayam Arthaha Pratyakshasya Gocharaha. So Rupadi, Rupa means color, form, etc. Rupadi. Because it does not have color, form, etc., meaning that it is attributeless. Na ayam arthaha. This vastu that we are talking about can be taken as Atma, this I, as we saw, this ultimate observer, or even the ultimate reality, which is Brahman. Nayam arthaha pratyakshasya gocharaha. It is not in the sphere of pratyaksha. This we have discussed in detail. Lingatya bhavacha nanumanadinam. Lingadi abhavat cha na anumana na anumana na anumanadinam. So linga means this first factor that is available through pratyaksha. Like seeing the smoke, I can infer the fire. So in order to infer the fire, I have to see the smoke. But this Atma or Brahman, the ultimate reality, it being attributeless, there is nothing, no first factor also available by a pratyaksha. So lingadya bhavacha na anumanadinam gocharaha. It is not available to the other pramanas also. And then the third sentence is very significant. Shankara says, Agama matra samadhigamya eva tu ayam artha dharmavat. So here, Agama means Shabdaha. So Agama matra samadhigamya means it has to be known only through the Shabdas of the Veda. Agama means the Shabdas of the Veda. Tu ayam artha dharmavat. Like dharma. Dharma is also known through the Shabdas of the Veda. Similarly, the Brahman or even Atma, the real nature of Atma is only known through the Shabdas of the Veda. So, a very significant statement. And in fact, this kind of summarizes or whatever our discussion was basically an elaboration of this. So we talked about this being a shastram, shasanat trayate iti shastram. The Veda Purva commands me and protects me. Vedanta educates me and protects me, educates me about Brahman, the ultimate reality, and protects me from what? From sorrow, from samsara, this endless struggle for fulfillment. So now let us look at the third statement in the PDF. This is from the Kathopanishad Bhashyam. Bhashya means it is written by Adi Shankaracharya, and there is no doubt about the authorship of this. So this says, Matra Pitra Sahasrebhyopi Hitaishina Vedenopadishtam Atmaikatva Darshanam Shanta Darpaihi Adaraniyam Ityartha. So here, Shankara uses this term called Hitaishin for the Veda. Hitaishin means a well-wisher. So Shankara says the Veda is a well-wisher, is a well-wisher. Hitaishina Vedena. So Hitaishin is the Veda. What kind of Hitaishin? So if you say, see, in this world, for a child, the child's best well-wisher in the world, if you have to pick, it would be the child's parents, Mata and Pita. There is nobody else in the world who can wish the child better than one's own parents. They cannot even think about the child coming to any harm. So Shankara says that the Veda is a Hitaishin that is greater than 1,000 mothers and fathers. Matra Pitra Sahasrebhyopi Hitaishina Vedena. So the well-wishing of the Veda is greater in magnitude than thousands of parents. So by this Veda, what is revealed? Hitaishina Vedena Upadishtam Atmaikatva Darshanam. This Veda reveals this Atmaikatva Darshanam, that this Jivatma and Paramatma are one. This Darshanam that the Veda reveals, this knowledge that is revealed by the Veda. So Shanta Darpaihi Adaraniyam. Shanta Darpaihi means those who have overcome their arrogance, pride, etc. Shanta Darpaihi, by these people, means people who have gained a certain level of Shuddhi of the intellect, a certain amount of Chitta Shuddhi. By them it is Adaraniyam. It is approached with reverence. Because this is the only pramana that can reveal the knowledge that can get me out of this samsara chakra. So now let us look at the Anubandha Chatushtayam of Vedanta. In fact, we discussed this topic in the very first and second classes. We also discussed the Anubandha Chatushtayam of the Veda Purva. So the Anubandha Chatushtayam are these fourfold factors that bind the student to a particular study. So they are the ones that motivate the student to take up the study. As we said, Prayojanam, Vishayaha, Sambandhaha, and finally the Adhikari. So we say that the Vedanta has a very different Anubandha Chatushtayam than the Veda Purva, and that is why it becomes a completely different Shastram altogether. We treat the Veda Purva and the Vedanta to be distinct Shastras because the Anubandha Chatushtayam is different. So let us take the Prayojanam first. So the Prayojanam of the Veda Purva is Artha, Kamaha and Dharmaha. So through the Veda Purva one can gain this Punyam through which one can get Artha and Kamaha. This Punyam is a third meaning of Dharma as we discussed. So through this third meaning of Dharma, one can gain Artha and Kamaha if one is a religious materialist. Or through this Dharma, which is Punyam, one can gain Chitta Shuddhi if one is a religiously spiritual person. This Chitta Shuddhi is the Adhikaritvam for Vedanta. But we say that this Veda Purva is not inimical to the ignorance. So it leaves the ignorance intact. For the time being, it goes along with the ignorant person saying, I'll give you these things because you want them. This person is saying, I want to be fulfilled, so I'll give you some things that fulfill you. So the Veda Purva goes along with this person, but then it doesn't destroy the samsara, it only perpetuates the samsara. But then the Prayojanam of Vedanta is very different. We said that the secondary Prayojanam of Vedanta is the rise of the knowledge, Atma Jnanam. But it is only the secondary Prayojanam, Avantara Prayojanam, because the Mukhya Prayojanam is really the Moksha, the Purnatva, that one gains through the knowledge. So through the knowledge, one gains this Purnatvam, Shokam Tarati Atmavit. The knower of this Atma transcends all sorrow. Or Brahmavit apnoti param. The knower of Brahman gains this, attains this param, which is this Purnatvam. So this Purnatvam, when one gains this Purnatvam, which is one's own nature, it puts an end to samsara. The Prayojanam is very different. And Jivan Muktihi, this is called Jivan Muktihi, liberated while living, because the one who has gained this Purnatvam, as though gained through knowledge that Purnatvam is my nature, such a person is a Jivan Muktaha, because this person is liberated from all the Apurnatvam. Then we come to the second part of the Anubandha Chatushtayam. What is this Vishayaha? We said that the Vishayaha of Veda Purva is this Dharmaha in the form of Chodana, Lakshanaha, Arthaha, Dharmaha. The Vishayaha of Veda Purva is these do's and don'ts, Vidhihi and Nishedha, that are revealed through the sentences of the Veda. But we say that the Vishayaha of Vedanta, this is Atma, this is I, this subject. And the Vishayaha of Vedanta is this Paramatma, this absolute reality, from whom this whole world has emerged, by whom this entire world is sustained, and into whom this whole world resolves. And it is Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, the identity of the Jivatma and Paramatma. This is the Vishaya. Then we looked at the Sambandha. The Sambandha in case of Veda Purva is that the sentences reveal some karma, and that somebody has to do the anushtanam of this karma to get the prayojanam. The Sambandha is the relationship between the Vishayaha and the prayojanam. So what is the relationship between the Vishayaha and the prayojanam in case of Vedanta? So the sentences of Vedanta reveal the nature of Atma. So Vedanta is the pramanam, and the Vishayaha, that is the Atma or Brahman, is the prameya. So between Vedanta and the Vishayaha, there is the pramana prameya sambandha, the revealer revealed relationship. Now, between Vedanta and Jnanam, what is the relationship? We say that the relationship between Vedanta and Jnanam is that of the Prama relationship. It is Vedanta is the revealer that reveals the Vishaya, that is Atma, by giving rise to the Atma Jnanam, which is the Prama. And what is the relationship between the Jnanam and the Prayojanam? Because we have come to the Jnanam. Vedanta is the Pramanam that gives rise to the Jnanam, that is the Prama. But our ultimate end is the Prayojanam. So we have one more hop. What is the relationship between the Jnanam and the Prayojanam? We say that the Jnanam is the sadhana and the Prayojanam is the sadhyam. As we have said, moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam. The sadhana for moksha, the means for moksha is only jnana. So jnanam is the sadhana and moksha is the sadhyam. Purnatvam is the sadhyam. So this is the sambandha. And then who is the adhikari? We said the adhikari for Veda Purva is this religious materialist who is desirous of artha and kamaha through dharma, that is punyam, or the religiously spiritual person who is desirous of chitta shuddhi through dharma, that is punyam. But we say here the adhikari is not such a person who is a religious materialist or a religiously spiritual person who desires chitta shuddhi. Here the adhikari is somebody who has a certain chitta shuddhi to some extent. He has already accomplished that and he is not after artha and kama. But he is the one who is desirous of moksha, who is desirous of this purnatva. And this adhikari knows that this moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam and the sadhana is jnanam. But this adhikari also knows one additional thing. He is not just a mumukshuhu, he is also a jigyasuhu. So the adhikari knows that this jnanam is also eka sadhana sadhyam and the means to that jnanam, the sadhana is pramanam. And then he knows one more thing, which is that this pramanam is Vedanta. So now all the factors have come together in this adhikari. That is why a person now approaches Vedanta with all humility and sincerity to understand what Vedanta is saying. Such a person is an adhikari. So he has Shraddha in Vedanta as being the pramana that can lead me to Atma Jnana. So now what does the study of Vedanta involve? So we say that the study of Vedanta is employing this pramanam. Employing the pramanam, that is the Vedanta, by listening to it in the form of Shravanam. One is exposing oneself to the words of Vedanta through Shravanam, done with the help of a Guru. A Guru who understands this and who can handle the Vedanta as a pramana. This is very important. When a Guru handles Vedanta as a pramana and teaches it as a pramana. So the sentences of the Vedanta being a pramana, what they are talking about, they are revealing something that is a fact. As we said, knowledge only reveals what is. So Vedanta is revealing what is. It is a pramana that reveals what already is. And so the Guru must handle the Vedanta as a pramana and present it in such a manner that the words reveal an accomplished fact. My eyes are revealing an accomplished fact, the color of an object. Similarly, this identity, this Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam is an accomplished fact. And the Vedanta has to be handled in such a way that it reveals this fact. That is what is Shravanam. So this involves taking up the sentences of Vedanta and inquiring into the meanings. As we have said, the sentences contain words and the words have their meanings. So what the sentences are revealing is a relationship between the meanings of the words in the sentence. And the relationship between the meanings of the words is revealing an accomplished fact that I have to know that I don't know. So then, following the Shravanam, there is Mananam, because in this process there can be doubts. And the doubts, generally during the course of Shravanam, the doubts are taken up and they are also cleared. But then if there are persistent doubts, then they have to be cleared through dialogue with the Guru. So this, Puja Swami Paramarthananda ji calls Shravanam as consistent and systematic study of Vedanta for a length of time under a competent Acharya. Consistent and systematic study of Vedanta for a length of time under a competent Acharya. And when this consistent and systematic study is done for a length of time, then a transformation begins to happen, provided that the Shravanam is done right. But the transformation is the rise of this knowledge. Basically, let us not imagine some mystical transformation. The transformation is the rise of the knowledge because the knowledge is transformative. So, there is this rise of knowledge through the operation of the pramana. When an appropriate and adequate pramana comes in contact with the prameya, then the knowledge takes place. Knowledge takes place. And through this, one finds this, that Mundaka Upanishad says this. Yaha vai tat paramam brahma veda saha brahmaiva bhavati. The one who knows Brahman, saha vai tat paramam brahma veda, the one who knows Brahman, brahmaiva bhavati, becomes Brahman. This is the transformation. And this is strange. How does a knower of Brahman become Brahman? See, there is this science called entomology, if I'm stating it right. Entomology. So entomology is the study of insects. An entomologist is a person who studies insects, who has studied insects. So the one who is studying insects doesn't become an insect, thankfully. In general, what we find is that the knower of something doesn't become that thing, thankfully. But then how does a knower of Brahman become Brahman? The reason is that he already was Brahman. How did the 10th man become the 10th man? He was already the 10th man. He just didn't know it. And that is why knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. How? Purely through knowledge. He did not know he was Brahman. Now he knows he is Brahman. There is no other becoming. Knowledge alone is enough. And that is why there is so much emphasis on this knowledge and the pramana. But then there is often this question that comes up, that how do I go beyond intellectual knowledge? Because this knowledge, it seems that I gain is intellectual knowledge. And somebody gives this example that my friend visited the Valley of Flowers in the Himalayas. A beautiful place. Friend visited there, stayed for 1 week, and went on big hikes there and all that. It is there you can hike from the Valley of Flowers to Gangotri, etc. So my friend went there and he came back and gave me a 1 hour description of the Valley of Flowers. But all of this remains the second-hand, indirect knowledge in my mind. Or you can call it intellectual knowledge. Now consider this, when I directly visit the Valley of Flowers, having heard this description, my experience is entirely different. So there is this second-hand intellectual knowledge. But then my experience when I directly visit the Valley of Flowers is entirely different dimension. So similarly, isn't it the case that when Shravanam happens, I'm hearing about this Atma, about this Brahman, and the knowledge that takes place is this second-hand, indirect, intellectual knowledge. And then I have to do something else. This is theory. What I know is theory. And then I have to put it into practice in order to really gain this experience. So it is an objection that is raised, that Shravanam is not enough. So we say that there are two fallacies in this question. The question itself, there are two fallacies. One is the usage of this term called intellectual knowledge. As we have discussed before, knowledge is a modification in the mind of the knower. We said all knowledge is intellectual only. So we don't prefix unnecessary adjectives, because prefixing unnecessary adjectives lead to confusion. Like if somebody were to say yellow turmeric, and it makes it sound that there is a pink turmeric or a red turmeric, which is not. There's nothing like that. So there is no such thing like cranial knowledge or cardiovascular knowledge. All knowledge takes place in the intellect only. So the first fallacy in the question is calling something intellectual knowledge. You should drop that adjective. But you can call it indirect versus direct knowledge. That is there. We will see that. The second fallacy is that I have to do something to become Brahman. See, the nature of a thing is something that does not change. The swarupa of a thing, if we talk about it, is something that doesn't change. In fact, what is changeless about a thing is its nature. When we talk about the nature of the thing, it is what is changeless in that entity. That is its nature. For example, the fact that fire is hot never changes. So heat is said to be the nature, the swarupa of fire. It can never change. Similarly, if I am a fundamentally limited being by nature, if my swarupa is being limited, then no matter what I do, it can never change. I will always remain limited. If I am really the limited body mind, or I am some limited being, then if my nature, if my swarupa is that of a limited being, whatever I do, I can never get rid of that limitation, like fire can never get rid of the heat. So, in such a case, moksha would be impossible. Vedanta would be useless. If a limited being has to become limitless through the knowledge of Vedanta, that is impossible. Moksha is impossible. Vedanta would be useless. You might not have the, you might even better off not waste time in Vedanta classes. Fact of the matter is, I am already that limitless Brahman and I don't know it. That is the only situation in which moksha is possible and Vedanta becomes a useful pramana. So we say that there is no question of becoming something else other than what you already are. So this is the second fallacy in the question. But Vedanta admits that there is something called indirect knowledge and direct knowledge. Indirect knowledge is called paroksha jnanam, and direct knowledge is called aparoksha jnanam. We saw this in the case of the 10th man also. But both are intellectual only. It is not that one is intellectual, another is not intellectual. There is indirect knowledge and direct knowledge. Now, what Vedanta says is this description of the valley of flowers, where the valley of flowers is a remote object. When I hear the description, it is a remote object. So, in such cases, when I hear the description of a remote object, it remains the second-hand indirect knowledge. Such words are called descriptive words. Descriptive words. This is paroksha jnana. But then Vedanta says that there are certain cases where Shabda Pramana produces direct knowledge, aparoksha jnana. What are such cases? When the object that I need to know, it is already here and now. It is already being experienced. In case of Valley of Flowers, I have to go there and experience the object. But in this case that Vedanta is talking about, the object is here and now. It is already being experienced. So I have general knowledge of the object. What I lack is some special knowledge about the object. In such cases, the words become introductory words, not descriptive words. Again, a very important thing. So when I hear these introductory words, whatever I am experiencing is just introduced to me. I don't, and when it's introduced, I gain the knowledge. I don't need to experience it separately. It's already experienced. So in case of descriptive words, the description comes first. The experience comes later. But in case of introductory words, the experience comes first. It is already there. And then the words introduce me to what I am experiencing. So what are some examples of this? Where introductory words produce direct knowledge. So let us take the example of the 10th man. In case of the 10th man was already experiencing the 10th man. The 10th man lacked the knowledge, special knowledge that I am the 10th man that I am seeking. This was all he was missing. He was already experiencing the 10th man. So the words, you are the 10th, those words basically introduced himself to himself as the 10th man. When he heard this, his ignorance of being the 10th man was gone. And his seeking of the 10th man ended because he himself was the 10th man. He didn't have to seek this experience of the 10th man. Similarly, let's take another example of an old man with a somewhat defective vision. So he goes with his wife to the market and he purchases this jackfruit and they get it home. And the next day, this old man, the wife tells this man to cut the jackfruit. So he goes to the kitchen and he looks around and he says that I'm only seeing a pumpkin. Where is a jackfruit? So he has this defective vision. His wife tells him that the so-called pumpkin that you're already experiencing is that jackfruit you're seeking for. This pumpkin is not really a pumpkin, it's a jackfruit. So he says, oh, okay. So he knows he made a mistake. Then he cuts the pumpkin, cuts the jackfruit. So here again, just the introductory words were enough. He didn't need to go and experience the jackfruit separately. He understood that whatever he was experiencing is a jackfruit he's seeking. So let us take another example. This kind of thing happens at the school reunions. So let us take this example of a middle school reunion where people studied together in the third or fourth standard, and then they met after 40 years, 40 years, let us say. Then everybody is meeting at some place, you see, and then people are moving around and talking to each other, introducing themselves and all that. And so there's this person who goes there and he meets quite a few people. And then three of them are standing and talking. There are three people there. And he says, I met this person, I met that person, and so on. And it's very funny to see them after such a long time, etc. And then this person tells his other friend, that you remember that, and all of them, these three of them have been talking for the last 10 minutes. So he tells this person that you remember that Chintu, you know, that prankster fellow who always used to sit in the last bench and always used to do these pranks in the class. One day he threw some, dummy snake and scared everybody. You remember that person? So is he here? Where is he? So this person, I asked that person, let us say. And this person says, what? You didn't meet him? So I say, no, I didn't meet him. So he says, you see this person who has been talking to us for the last for 10 minutes. So he said, this person is now bearded and he's bald headed and he has, this big paunch now. You see this person? So this person, this bearded, balded fellow, is that Chintu you are seeking? Is that prankster Chintu, that thin Chintu? So when I see this, this person who I have been experiencing for the last 10 minutes is this Chintu. I gain that knowledge. And now I don't have to go and experience this Chintu separately. Similarly, Pujya Swamiji gives one of his favorite examples. That once Pujya Swamiji, my Paramaguru, Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati Ji, so once he was on a flight to Dehradun. From Dehradun, he wanted to go to Rishikesh. So he boarded the flight and he settled down in his chair, in his seat. And then there was this person who came there, a foreigner who was pretty large. And then he was looking for his seat and his seat was next to Swamiji. So then they had to remove this separator, you see, because he was a large person and he needed more room. So he sat. And when he sat, Swamiji had to move to one side because he didn't have enough space. And then they struck a conversation. And then Swamiji asked him where you're going, etc. So this person said that I am going to Rishikesh. So then Swamiji said, I'm also from Rishikesh, and what are you going to do there? And he said, I'm going to travel around, and I also want to meet a Swami there. So then Swamiji said, which Swamiji do you want to meet? And where does he live? This person said he is in Purani Jhadi. So he took out a slip of paper and he was reading out Purani Jhadi. So Swamiji said, oh, I am also in Purani Jhadi. Let me look at what it says. And then it said Swami Dayananda, Purani Jhadi, Rishikesh. So this person was going there to meet Swamiji, but he did not know that this is the Swami. So Swamiji then told him, and Swamiji describes this incident in a humorous way. So he told him effectively that I am the Swami that you want to meet, but Swamiji puts it hilariously, saying that this Swami next to you, whom you are very intimately experiencing at this point, because your hand is over him, even your thigh is over him at this point, and he is literally getting crushed under you at this point. So this Swami, who is literally getting crushed under you at this point, whom you are experiencing so closely, is that Swami Dayananda that you are seeking? So when this person hears this, his eyes light up. So this is what I have been missing. So I don't have to now go and experience him separately. So in all of these cases, what is sought, the object being sought is already being experienced. What is that? So one is not lacking the experience. What one is lacking is just the knowledge that one is missing. And what I am experiencing is already what I am seeking. We say that these words generate direct knowledge. This is not indirect knowledge that has to be made direct through some other experience. So similarly, we say that Vedanta also produces direct knowledge. Why? Because this Atma, this I, is there in every experience. I always talk about I am so and so, I am so and so, I am Apurnaha. In the conclusion, I am Apurnaha, the I is present. So I know that I exist. I know that I exist. So what I am missing is not this experience of the I. So we say that even the words of Vedanta are not a pramana for the existence of the Atma. This is because the Atma is self-evident as this I. It is already present as this I. But then I lack this Vishesha Jnanam about this I. I have the Samanya Jnanam. I lack the Vishesha Jnanam. So I have made a mistake about who this I is. I have superimposed all kinds of things. So we say that I am Apurnaha, and then I begin to seek Purnatva. So what I lack is not an experience of myself. What I lack is a Vishesha Jnanam about myself. So these words of Vedanta are a pramana for what the nature of the Atma is. It is revealing an existent and an already accomplished fact, not something that I need to accomplish. So the words of pramana, when they are words of Vedanta, when they are handled as a pramana, they knock off my misconceptions about who I am and introduce the same I that I have been talking about all my life. They introduce that same I to me as this Paramatma Brahman. So the words produce direct knowledge because what I am seeking, that Atma, that is Purnaha, is present here and now. We say there are two types of Vakyas in Vedanta. One is called Avantara Vakya. Avantara Vakya means Vakyas like the description of Srishtihi, the description of Ishvara, etc. So those are descriptive words. So there are descriptive words in Vedanta also. They produce indirect knowledge that Brahman is first. Brahma asti, Brahman is. So they produce that indirect knowledge that is called Paroksha Jnana. But then the Vedanta contains these Mahavakyas. They are called Mahavakyas, the Vakyas that talk about the identity. They talk about the identity of the Jivatma and Paramatma. So here, this Jivatma is already present. This I is already there. It is already being experienced. They say that Mahavakya produces direct knowledge. Aparoksha jnana. So they introduce me to myself, just as the 10th man was introduced to himself. So then can you prove to me? Somebody may ask, taking up Vedanta is a fairly, uh, time consuming exercise in some ways because one has to devote time to the study, one has to have a certain commitment. So I have to take all this up. Can you prove to me that Vedanta will generate this knowledge for me? Can you prove to me? So in this case, we talk about this story of this blind man. So there was a certain blind man who was blind from birth. And this person could not see anything. So he went to various doctors and inquired, and most doctors said it's a hopeless case. You see, your case cannot be fixed. But then he came across a doctor, and the doctor had handled some of these cases earlier. So he knew what the problem was. And this doctor said, I can fix it for you. We can do it. Come one day, we'll do a surgery, and then you should see. And then this person wasn't entirely convinced. Well, he thought about it and he went for the surgery. And the surgery was done. And then they blindfolded him for 4 days, saying that on the 4th day, we'll open the bandage. And on the 4th day, the doctor and the nurses, they all came there. And then the doctor said, now let me open your bandage. Very important day in your life today. We'll open your bandage. So this person surprisingly said, prove to me that my eyes will see, and only then I will allow you to open the bandage. So his doctor discussed with him for half an hour. He said, let me open, you'll be all right. I have done this before, you will see. This person was not convinced. He said, prove to me. And the doctor said, I have another appointment now. So let us do this quickly. He told the nurses. You have to discharge this patient, otherwise we'll be stuck with this patient. So they held the arms of the patient because he was resisting opening the bandage. They held his arms and they opened the bandage. The patient said, no, prove to me that I can see. Then, once the bandage was open, the doctor pried his eyes open like this. He was still saying, prove to me. And then he suddenly stopped. Because then he started to say, yes, I see what you're talking about, I see. And he started jumping around with joy that I am seeing now. What this story tells us is that eyes have to prove themselves as a valid means of knowledge. No other way can one prove to you that the eyes will result in fruitful knowledge. You have to employ the eyes. Similarly, we say that the only way to prove that Vedanta will give rise to the knowledge is to allow Vedanta to prove itself. So one has to take up the study of Vedanta, be committed to that study, and let Vedanta prove itself. There is no other way. Then we say that what Vedanta produces, this Shravanam produces, is aparoksha jnanam, this direct knowledge. But there is one condition for this direct knowledge to be produced. The student must have certain qualifications. A certain preparation of the mind is required. We answered the question how one becomes a mumukshuhu. We answered the question how one becomes a jigyasuhu. There's this third part. For one to become an adhikari, one must have certain other qualifications also. If these qualifications are there, and as we have said, the combination of Vedanta and this qualified adhikari who is a mumukshuhu and jigyasuhu is like fuel and fire coming together. There is instantaneous combustion. So our next question is, how does one gain these qualifications? That we'll take up in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So we have about 10 minutes for some questions or comments.
Sir, can I ask a question, sir?
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. In the last 19 classes, we are talking about various duties and values which are important to get qualified for a Jignasu and Mumukshu to progress in the spiritual path.
Right.
So in that one question is coming to my mind. I don't know it is relevant or maybe a difficult one. I do not know. We have that 4 varnas have been created in the beginning, right? Based on our duties. Like for example, the Kshatriyas to protect the country. Second, Brahmanas to study Vedas and chant Vedas and understand the Vedic principle for the well-being of the world. Third is Shudras, and the last one is Vaishyas. In today's context, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so I'm just asking this coming to my mind. So don't mistake me asking this question.
Sure, sure.
Are we Brahmin by birth or are we Brahmins by the first question? Are we Brahmins by birth? Are we Brahmin? Are we called Brahmin by because of our duties and values, which has been segmented in the 4 one? That's the first question.
Yes.
The second subset of that question is, if not, in today's context, we are playing a different roles for these Varnas category. Brahmins, little bit Brahmins, little bit Vaishyas, and little bit maybe Kshatriyas in terms of whatever role we perform in the government or maybe in terms of teaching in a school. So we are into the mix of various roles here. The second subset of this question. Third one is to meet these two. Suppose if I play a couple of roles on all these 3 varnas in this current context, are we supposed to adhere to those duties and values when we execute those actions? These are 3 questions coming to my mind in order to fulfill that I am not violating any of the principles or duties and values as described in the Vedas. These are the 3 questions I'm asking.
Right. So what you ask is a very important question, and it requires a somewhat elaborate answer. I think the best way to handle this might be that I can forward a certain transcription of a talk by my guru, Swami Paramarthananda ji, on the group. And you can go through it.
Yeah.
And that might give a certain clarity on this.
Okay.
Because at this point, this question, it's an important question, but it is somewhat a little bit, away from the context of the particular class.
Okay.
So I will forward you that talk. In fact, you can take a look at it, and that itself might answer, the questions that you have in this case. Okay.
So though I thought slightly deviated from this class, but it's relevant because
yes, you are very right.
I need to progress in my, the spiritual path towards.
Yes. See, there is no easy answer for this in today's context. Yeah. And that is why, I cannot do justice to this topic within, the 3-4 minutes of time we have.
Yeah, fully
we
understand.
Can take this up. I will forward you that detailed transcript, and then we will take it up from that point.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure. So any other questions?
Just one other slightly naive question. I think we also broached this a little earlier, but today is a good point to re-raise this question.
Sure.
So this Brahman, which is the source of all creation, the source of everything that we know, the source of all knowledge also. If it is already me, then why it is, and I already have it in me, why is it so difficult for me to realize itself? Why do I have to go through all this, and why can it not be a more easy way of realizing? Because I already have the power in me, right? And so that's the thing.
Yes, it is difficult because, as we said, our senses are outwardly directed. So we find it convenient to search for the ring where the light is. Searching for the ring where the light is definitely easier than searching for the ring where the light is not there. So all of our pramanas that we are aware of are illuminating certain areas where this Purnatvam cannot be found. And this ignorance is a very strange thing. It seems obvious to us that the 10th man should have known he was the 10th man.
Correct.
But this ignorance is a mischief maker, right? It not only hides what the reality is, but projects what is not the reality as the reality. So this 10th man took himself to not be the 10th man, and also took it to be a fact that the 10th man was outside somewhere. So these are all the various things that make it harder. It's basically rooted, the root cause is ignorance, and ignorance can make things really hard. It can create enormous suffering, all purely due to ignorance. We suffer in our dream. We can enormously suffer in the dream. We can sweat terribly and then wake up from a nightmare. Why does it happen? Because I'm ignorant of me, the status of me being the waker. He said, this is very similar.
So the Brahman itself is ignorant, and it continues to be in the state like Newton's law, and continues to be in the state of ignorance unless shined upon the light of knowledge, something like that.
So we don't use the term as Brahman itself being ignorant, because really speaking, Brahman is free of the samsara. Brahman is not a samsari.
Now, then if we say Brahman is not ignorant, but I am ignorant to not realize the Brahman in me, then it would mean that I am not Brahman, right?
So basically, the ignorance is not outside of consciousness. The ignorance is in Brahman. Ignorance is in Brahman. But I, as this due to ignorance, right? Due to ignorance of me being really that Brahman that is independent of ignorance, right? I have taken myself to be this jiva, this limited being. And then I am the one who's saying I am ignorant. So, really speaking, Brahman is free of ignorance. For example, let us take the example of the sun. The sun illuminates a clean pond, and the sun illuminates a dirty pond also, right? There is a reflection of the sun in the clean pond, and there is a reflection of the sun in the dirty pond, right? Now, let us say that somebody looks at the reflection and says this reflection in this clean pond is really clean, and this reflection in the dirty pond is dirty. And therefore, when the sun is shining here, the sun is clean, but when the shining here, the sun has become dirty. So now, see, the sun is just doing a job of illumination, nothing else. But by illuminating a dirty pond, does the sun become dirty?
No, the sun doesn't become dirty, but by saying that when the sun shines on a clean pond, the sun shines on a dirty pond, we have also made the distinction that sun and the ponds are different.
See,
they are two different things.
The sun is only one. The sun is only one. The reflections are different, right?
No. For the sun to reflect or shine, illuminate something, that something is a different object than the sun itself.
Yes, that is a limitation of this particular example. That is what you're saying there. But if you look at the reflection, right? If you look at the reflection, is the reflection really different from the sun? See, the reflection, and if the reflection was different from the sun, the reflection should be able to exist without the sun. But the reflection cannot exist independent of the sun. So the reflection is completely the existence. The reflection doesn't have an independent existence. The reflection's existence is dependent on the existence of the sun. If somebody creates a blockage between the sun and the earth, for example, let's say there is an eclipse, the reflection will go away. There is no reflection. So the existence of the reflection depends on the sun. In that sense, the reflection is not really different from the sun. So what I am saying is that what I am, what I'm talking about, this I has two components. There is this original Brahman, and then there is the reflected part also. We will study more this in detail. This I is a mixture of the reflection and the original.
Okay.
But what I am generally aware of is this reflection. I have ignored the original I. And then I'm talking about this reflection always, that I am apurnaha, I am limited, etc. All of this happens because of this reflection that comes into the picture. But when we really analyze this with the pramana of Vedanta, you'll see that truly, like, this reflection is not really independent of the sun. The reflection is in fact the sun, because it has no independent existence. My face in the mirror is the original. That is just happens to be reflected in the mirror. So all of these judgments that I'm making are only attributable to the reflection. The original is always free of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So we already past our time. Shall we conclude now?
Sure. Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes,
Guruji.
sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Hari
Yeah.
Hari Om Guru.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Thank you. Thank you, Guruji.
Hari Om.
Bye.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.